Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wings for Life. I'm just so happy you're with us tonight. My name is Ann Edenfield Sweet. I'm the executive director and founder of Wings for Life International. And tonight we have just a wonderful guest that has quite a sad story to share, and a topic that is not really easy to discuss is sex trafficking. And she is the founder of For the One. A wonderful woman, Toya Kaplan. She assists survivors of sex trafficking. She helps 12 to 25-year-olds, first of all, find out how possibly they are being groomed, then how they are being recruited, and then also if they have been trafficked, how she can help them afterwards. And she just has a wonderful program, and I'm so excited that we're all going to learn about it tonight. So she has quite the story. I'm going to let her share her own story with you. And so I'm really pleased to welcome Toya Kaplan. So Toya, welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of this. So I'm always really grateful for the opportunity. And so I want to thank everybody that is watching this, has decided to take your time. I don't take that for granted. But I do like to spread awareness. And on that note, I want to go ahead and play a video that we've made, which kind of helps you get caught up with some of the details and the numbers on sex trafficking.
You just want to be loved. You just want to be nurtured. You just want to be cared for. But when those things don't happen, you lose hope. When I was 11 years old, my life was stolen from me. My neighbors took advantage of me and began to use me for their pleasure from 11 up until I was 18 years old.
Being in law enforcement for 30 years, I worked sex crimes. I ran a domestic violence unit. And many of those victims that I worked with that I thought were a victim of domestic violence was really a victim of human trafficking.
It's a clandestine epidemic, but one that doesn't just occur in the shadows. It can also happen in plain sight.
Of course, sex trafficking occurs both domestic and international. We've seen a considerable amount of trafficking within our state. On the international side, with the massage parlors and being close proximity to the border, some of the labor trafficking did with the agricultural, and some on the restaurant side. On the sex trafficking side, we've seen more activity dealing with prostitution and online ads.
With the dominance of social media in the digital age, more and more victims are being lured, being bought, and being sold online.
We've had husbands, we've had boyfriends, we've had parents post their own family members on a social media platform, advertising sex as an escort, and then they show up.
When these things were happening to me as a kid, I didn't have a safe place to run to. I didn't have the community to support me. I was just a young kid fighting for my life. I felt like I was on the side of the tracks where nobody would come, reaching and pulling, reminding me that I was special, reminding me that there was greatness within myself.
According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, there were 10,949 human trafficking cases reported in 2018. From those cases, more than 23,000 survivors were identified. However, there was a 25% jump in cases from the previous year, with a total of 51,919 cases from 2007 to 2018.
The demand is still there, and unfortunately there's individuals out there that'll pay to have sex with anyone regardless why they're there, what their situation is. So we see that vulnerable population and many of them are homeless or runaway children that are on the streets, and they get approached by these individuals and they're recruited and they're thought to believe that they are taken care of, and they're groomed, and then eventually they're trafficked.
The majority of victims are trafficked for sex, some of them forced into escort services, pornography, and prostitution at high-traffic venues like truck stops.
I got a call from the truck stop in Raton last month, and they said that 3 males dropped off a 16-year-old in the lot of the truck stop, and she was approaching truck drivers.
This story is all too common and all too hidden. Due to fear of retaliation, many witnesses and victims stay silent. But as the problem grows, so too do the tools to fight it.
So immediately, one of the truck drivers called the National Human Trafficking Hotline because he knew that he was supposed to do that based on the training we did.
The training was part of an initiative by the Attorney General's office to educate those in the trucking industry on how to spot human trafficking, as well as how to act upon a hunch.
Every child matters. And even if you don't have a child, look at that child as your child. Have compassion, have love, have generosity. One sound, one man, one movement can change the world.
If it's occurring right now and then, call 911. Notify local law enforcement, and then you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Look for warning signs. According to the Department of Homeland Security, things like a disconnect from friends and family, failure to attend school, or sudden and dramatic changes in behavior can all be signs of trouble. People living in unstable conditions, appearing to have been coached into social interactions, lack of personal possessions or freedom can point to trouble as well.
I think being aware, report, let us know if there's something that seems suspicious to you. We have a lot of runaway teens out there, and they're a vulnerable population. Our homeless are vulnerable as well, and we need to look out for them. We need to take care of them.
As for the One Ambassadors, you can join one of the education and training teams, help with funding of the Freedom Team, as well as working with Phase 3 survivors on starting a new life.
We have to put in the work, and we have to bring this epidemic completely down. We got to wipe it out, and we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we will.
So we'd like to start with that video whenever we can. I think it's a great way to give people sort of an outline of what things look like, and so just a snapshot. It also gives a few of the statistics, which I think some people find very informative and very powerful to see those numbers. And so we do try to include some of those. But as I mentioned, or actually as Ann mentioned, we're called For the One. And that is because we are focused on the one we can help, rather than those extravagant and really underrepresented numbers that you saw on that presentation. Rather than trying to figure out how we can help that huge number of people, our goal is really to help the ones we can, who is in front of us that we can help. And so I'm going to back up just for a second to talk about the fact that 12 years ago, I was where most people are, thinking that it was only international issues with sex trafficking. I had met a group from Moldova, and I learned from that group, many of them young girls around the age of 3 of my girls, that they were being trafficked at that age. And it outraged me as a mother. It outraged me as a woman. And my problem was that I worked full time in the United States, and I couldn't get on a plane and travel over there and do something. So we helped financially to get behind the group there that explained what they were going through in Moldova. Well, once I got to a place where I could actually help, about that same time, coincidentally, I found out about sex trafficking in the United States, and I found out about what does it look like. Things are different from country to country. And so in very short order, and frankly, in one probably 2-hour meeting, I was updated by someone who had a street ministry, explaining to me what it looked like in the United States, and not only in the United States, but also dialing it in further to New Mexico. So it's common throughout the United States the way it happens here, but each state even has its own nuances. Maybe a more Native American group that's affected by trafficking. Maybe there's more casinos and that affects more people that way. There's a lot of missing and indigenous children and women that have been sent off sex trafficking. Certainly anybody close to El Paso is experiencing an upsurge right now in trafficking. There's so many layers and so many issues. How many massage parlors are there in your town, whether it's rural area and very small, or the larger cities like Albuquerque? So we spent the first year, once I left that meeting, and I was told there needed to be a house somewhere where these women could go to once they decided to leave that lifestyle. They were either rescued or had ended up in jail because of a sting. They needed a home for those women to go to once they came out of the life. And so I spent a year with my daughter, and we opened Freedom House after a year of research, studying. We went to other states. Atlanta, Georgia has Wellspring Living, and we did their 4-day training, toured their home. We were able to go to Redeem Ministries in Houston, Texas. Arizona Dream Center allowed us to go there, and we spent some time in Oklahoma City at Beautiful Dream Society, and all those things helped us create what would become Freedom House. And so we opened that, and for 3 years, we took adult survivors of sex trafficking. And we our carve out was really specific because we were a group of women who just loved this people group and wanted to help them. And so we had to identify what we were and what we weren't. And we couldn't take people that were currently either having just overdosed. We couldn't take people that had been suicidal recently or were self-harming. We had to take things which were within our range of ability to help them with the limited resources we had. And so after about 3 years, we ended up closing. And again, not again, but it is a huge expense, about $180,000 to $200,000 a year for a home that could have had a maximum of 6 girls in it. And so my husband, who's been amazing and allowed me to do all of this, said, we need to figure out another way to benefit and affect more lives. How can we have more impact with this money? And so that's what I began to look at. And as we were ramping down to close down our home, we ended up deciding that we would work with what we call phase 3 survivors. And quickly, I'll explain that when we got a woman, and she was considered phase 1 right away. So she was detoxing. She began counseling immediately. We started to kind of shift her into what are healthier choices. By the time she got into phase 3, which was not identified by a set time, it really depended on the person. And we worked with her therapist to determine when that was. Phase 2 was, will you go to school? Are you interested in what? What might you even dream about doing with your life? And so phase 2 was surrounding them with resources to accomplish what might be their next steps. And by the time they got to be phase 3, we're looking at independence. What would it look like for you to move out into the community, whether you will have a roommate or you try to sustain your life alone? Well, what we realized with our phase 3 girls, as well as when we were winding down to close the house, is that they become vulnerable again, much in the way that our adult kids that are leaving high school and going to college, if parents didn't show up for them from healthy homes, if we didn't show up. I have a 32-year-old son. I still occasionally help him, but certainly all my kids have needed us at some point. They very much, having come from such trauma backgrounds, they very much still need somebody there for them. And so when we met with our girls and let them know that they were the last girls we would have in the house, and we would be hand in hand walking with them into their journey, we saw them panic in that moment. I should have never thought I could do this. How am I going to make it on my own, is what they said. And I said, you will not be on your own. You're not going to be by yourself. So that is what created what is now one leg of what we do, which is phase 3. And we work with our own survivors, but we also collaborate with other organizations that don't have a set amount of money for those people. People are very focused on rescue and helping law enforcement to capture these traffickers. And that's so important. It's like, the left hand needs the right hand, and we need both eyes if at all possible. We need every part of the moving parts that are involved in sex trafficking. We need all of them. But what I don't know of still is an organization that helps with phase 3 survivors to allow them to have ongoing stability when maybe they need help with a car. Maybe they need an attorney to get custody of their own child back. Maybe they need you to help. We've had one girl that had a dog that let her know if she was going to have seizures because she was so trauma ridden that it actually cost her a lot of physical and emotional things. So we got the dog taken care of when he got sick. We paid a vet bill. We had another girl that slept with her eyes open, and she had to have special glasses in order to sleep at all at night. And so we bought those glasses. There's so many different things that have come up that we had no idea phase 3 would be used for. And the organizations that we have vetted to be accountable to hold these girls and boys and men accountable to be drug-free. That's the main criteria. You can't be phase 3 and use drugs. That's one of our just biggest things. And so we work with their organizations to send them the monthly funds they need to continue to help those phase 3 survivors, not just the rescued ones, not just the programs that are so important, residential programs, wraparound resources. Those are all so necessary. All the counseling, every kind of thing you can imagine is needed. But we hadn't heard of anything that was phase 3. So once we closed, we became a phase 3 program also, and we are faith-based as a side note. But we took that on as part of what we did. The other thing it allowed me to do once I was not on call anymore, 24 hours a day, was that I could start doing awareness presentations again. And we trained a team and we were ready to go out and do that. The problem is that although we had opportunities and went out, we were not seeing a lot of reports, a lot of results from the awareness alone. And so I like to use the example, and it's called River Babies, and it's a parable. And it's a great way, I read it a couple of months ago. It's a great way to explain why awareness alone about sex trafficking isn't enough. And the story goes that a woman was washing her clothes on the side of the river, and she started looking up and noticing that there were babies floating down the river. And, gasping for air, she jumped in, and one at a time, the ones she could get to, she was pulling them out to save them, and then started calling other people from the side of the bank. Those are drowning babies. Come and help me. That's what they look like. They're over there by that, and identifying the drowning babies. But they were still all just affecting those babies, one baby at a time. And somebody in the group finally said, why don't we go to the mouth of the river and stop whoever's throwing the babies in? We need to go there and create a change. And that went off in me like an explosion. After having done this for the years that I had and being so frustrated, and many are that work with this people group, that there's how do we finally stop it? How do we finally make a difference? Instead of showing up with the ambulance and the gurney and frankly life support almost for these girls, some of them showed up with their few belongings in a trash bag when we got them from jail, one in particular. Why don't we get on the other side of it? Yes, help them. Let's help the ones that are being trafficked. But why don't we get up at the mouth of the river and stop this? And so that is the second leg of what we do now. We have created a campaign called Vulnerable No More. The name speaks for itself. I began to break down like what that campaign, it's actually almost like a military campaign, that we would go out ahead of this happening in the first place and stop it by identifying to the very people that they're targeting what it looks like. And my example that I went to first was DARE, which is, the drug prevention campaign. because we don't have anything currently to look at. And there's no proof of concept for us. So we have to look at other people who have done this well and pull from them. So that's what we did. And then I researched, the next one was called Keeping It Real. And that was some more great information. How do we create this peer-to-peer opportunity where these young people can, and young adults can actually talk together about this issue? And so what we did last year, when everybody knows COVID hit, we had planned to do our first event in September of 2020, and boom, everything came undone. And so what we ended up doing instead, because I was pacing in my house like a cat, and we just started creating YouTube videos. And I had specialists come in. You saw Anthony Mays on that video. Anthony Mays came in and did a segment for us on online predators, what that looks like, how you recognize it if your kids are being sucked in. If you put in Vulnerable No More as your search right now on YouTube, there are 10 videos. They're short. You can watch all sorts of topics on that. And I didn't know at the time why, other than I knew we had to do something. I wasn't going to stop. We were so going to get ahead of this one way or another. So what we ended up doing is we started creating the curriculum as soon as we were able to start talking to people about having live events again. We pulled 4 of those segments out, and those are our speakers for this campaign that we're going to be starting now. And so we'll do live events, but we're also going to do live stream whenever we have one. And I am going to say now that For the 1.1 would be the best way for you to find information on that if you're interested. I have people all over the United States. There's a group in Ghana, Africa, who's going to be joining us as well. They're creating watch parties in their own home because I can't right now go to those other states. I can sure get this information to them though. And our target age, as you saw on that video, 12 to 14 is the entry age for these young people. Boys and girls, by the way, if you didn't already know that, and you're watching, boys are also trafficked. And anybody that these traffickers see as vulnerable to them because of their backgrounds, what's happened to them in their past, those are the ones they're targeting. Those are also the ones they make the most money for, statistically, if you look at how much traffickers charge for people. But they also know that a very young person is naive and they don't understand what's being done when they're in the middle of being recruited, groomed, and trafficked. And so that's what we're doing. We're identifying it. We're going to show them what it looks like, sounds like, and so that these people can begin to see it when it comes to them. We're going to give them tools so that they can actually put those things in place and have a plan when somebody comes at them that way. They'll recognize it and they'll be able to respond to it. And then we have an after action, which you could also find out on that For the 1.1, which is a online group that meets, it's going to meet 4 times that people can be part of, females can be part of those groups to get more information that'll help build on what they learn in those 2-hour events that we're doing. And then I know that's a lot of information, but I also wanted to say that on a personal note, my why for this, in the end, as I've not end, really kind of in the middle, as I recognize what has really compelled me so much to do this was not just that I had young girls, and it was also not that I now have granddaughters, although that matters to me. But I also, as I was training and having to look at some of my own history, I recognized the fact that because as a 4-year-old, I had my first experience with sexual molestation, and I had it layered into my life as I was growing up. I, as an 11-year-old, started using drugs. I started smoking. I started, I was the thug, And so I dissected that and I began to understand that when things happen to somebody at a very young age, it's as if a parasite enters, at least it was for me. And I was just then vulnerable to people to try to control me. I believed everybody that came and tried to talk to me. I never thought someone was a threat. And that's the most dangerous place a young person can be in. That is why we're doing this. I'm on my watch. I'm not letting one more person that I can talk to or help somehow. I'm not letting one more person fall prey to that I could get this information to and actually change their future. I've talked to so many women that have said to me, I wish someone would have talked to me when I was a young girl. I wish someone would explain the difference between healthy dating, a person that really was interested in me versus someone that was trying to control me. So although we're on a sex trafficking path and we're in our lane, we're also going to scoop up people that are easily controlled by narcissists, domestic violence, date rape. There's so many ways that this information can be used to strengthen our communities. And so I invite you to find out more about it. I'm very hopeful that everybody that's listening will get plugged in. If it's happened to you already, if you've been trafficked somewhere along the line, if you've been sexually abused, please reach out to our organization. We can connect you with resources. We do have counselors available. We can connect you to help. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Wow. Wow. I knew it was going to be powerful, and it is, and it was. And Toya, thank you. We need this kind of help across the United States. It is not just happening in Africa or other third world countries. It's happening right here in the United States, right here in our hometown and your hometown. So reach out and check out that website. And if you're with us through Zoom, of course, we're going to go to breakout rooms. And so then you'll be able to talk to Toya and ask her any other questions that you might have. In the meantime, I always like to close with a story. So I'm going to close with a story. And I was trying to think, oh, gee, what am I going to say for this one? And I found this and I really love it. It's called In the Valleys I Grow. And it was written by Jane Egglestrom. Sometimes life seems hard to bear, full of sorrow, trouble, and woe. It's then I have to remember that it's in the valleys I grow. If I always stayed on the mountaintop and never experienced pain, I would never appreciate God's love and would be living in vain. I have so much to learn and my growth is very slow. Sometimes I need the mountaintops, but it's in the valleys I grow. I do not always understand why things happen as they do, but I am very sure of one thing: my Lord will see me through. Forgive me for complaining when I'm feeling so very low. Just give me a gentle reminder that it's in the valleys when I grow. Continue to strengthen me and use my life each day to share your love with others and help them find their way. Thank you for the valleys, for the one thing I know: the mountains tops are glorious, but it's in the valleys when I grow. So if you're in a deep valley right now, Toya and her organization is here to help. Wings for Life. That's why we're called Wings for Life. We're trying to give you wings to fly for the rest of your life. And so reach out to us. I'll connect you to Toya, and together we can make a difference. So thanks for being with us tonight. We're so grateful that you're here. Again, this will be the end for our Facebook and our YouTube audience, but for those on Zoom, stay right here because we're going to break out immediately. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful night.